Young people are getting infected and dying. Old people are getting infected and dying. You know, people with pre-existing conditions. This is not something to play with.
So stay your monkey behind at home.
How y'all doing? Zachary Carroll, I'm just putting Christ back into the culture. So, due to the COVID, Rona, the Florida government issued a better at home, stay behind at home order, you know, and only allowing people to go outside for essential services such as doctor's appointments, grocery stores, and you know, various recreational activities. We have an evangelical pastor of a mega church, Pastor Rodney Howard-Browne, decided to say, you know what, forget those orders. I only take my orders from God. I'm gonna meet. We are gonna meet. Despite, you know, all the dangers that it can be had for people who are spreading it, who are asymptomatic, he decided, you know what, I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm going to meet. We are going to meet. Nothing is gonna stop me from preaching the word in person. And he was brought up on 2 charges, 2 second-degree misdemeanors: unlawful assembly and violation of emergency health laws. And they put a warrant out for his arrest. Yes, that's what happens when you break the law. They arrest you. They arrest you. Yes, yes. So, obviously, definitely want to comment on this story. Let's hear the story from Fox News.
And thousands of residents who may interact with them this week in danger.
Hillsborough Sheriff Chad Chronister said Brown encouraged members to show up in person amid the coronavirus pandemic, even providing bus transportation. Brown turned himself in on charges of unlawful assembly and violating public health emergency rules of isolation and quarantine.
This church has a concern not only for the physical well-being of its participants in the community, but also the spiritual well-being.
Liberty Counsel, now representing the pastor, maintains the church had hand sanitizer available, 6-foot separations on the floor for family groups, and staff wearing gloves.
They bought $100,000 worth of hospital-grade equipment that they have established throughout the church that kills microbes, including those in the family of the coronavirus.
Attorney Matthew Staber calls the arrest discriminatory and unconstitutional.
You cannot look at this situation and say that it's being evenly enforced across the board.
Texas-based First Liberty Institute, which defends religious freedom, sees gathering restrictions in a different light.
This is a hard adjustment for people to make, but I think we have to make that adjustment. The state has to have a compelling justification, a compelling reason to say we're going to ask people of a certain size of gathering to stop meeting for a period of time temporarily.
They're encouraging religious leaders to continue serving, just online, in small groups or drive-through type events.
Let's figure out the best way we can go and work together to preserve religious liberty on the one side, but also maintain the public health on the other side of things. Those two can work together.
Haley Hines, Fox 13 News.
All right, Haley, thanks. So where exactly does the Constitution stand on when we have restrictions for gatherings, especially when you have a religious one? Well, check this out today. We spoke with William LaMarshall. He is actually a professor of law at the University of North Carolina. He's an expert in constitutional law, and he told Fox 13 today that if there's a dangerous epidemic that actually is putting communities at risk, there are, in fact, legitimate government reasons to restrict what otherwise would be constitutionally permissible. What does that mean? Well, what's not constitutional, let's start there. If the danger does subside, but the restrictions remain in place. Or, for example, if the restrictions were enforced on religious groups only. Listen.
If the order said that only religious groups couldn't congregate, that would be a problem. But as long as it's a neutral limitation, then it goes to political gatherings, it goes to religious gatherings, social gatherings, concerts, as you mentioned. It will generally be upheld because of the state's interest in emergency health situations like this.
And Marshall referenced the case, in fact, this one, Jacobson versus Massachusetts, way back in 1905, an example of the government overriding individual liberties during a health crisis. A pastor objected to the state requiring people to get smallpox vaccines. Well, the Supreme Court, they sided with Massachusetts, ruling that the general public has a right to protect itself against epidemics.
Okay. This is what happens when you get too evangelically, okay, too evangelical. You start just believing that you just can go against better judgment and better reasoning, and just do things that you shouldn't do. I mean, I'm not going to say that his heart wasn't in the right place, Pastor Howard, but I think his application was kind of misguided and probably will lead to many people being infected, unfortunately. So let's just review some facts here. Okay, so according to the Tampa Bay Times, thanks to my friend Monique, the current cases in Florida is 9,008 as of 12 hours from now, and the death rate is 144. Okay, so that percentage, it's about 1.5%. Okay, the death rate of the common flu is 0.1%. Okay, so it is drastically more deadly than the flu. Okay, that's the kind of odds we're going up against. Okay, so this pastor is seriously putting his flock in danger, and that's one thing that I'm learning, and then I know that a pastor is he's a shepherd of the flock. He is the one who is to protect the people that God has entrusted to him. Okay, and so he should be putting their safety above his own gain, above his own notoriety or whatever. I do want to share some scriptures that kind of contextualize what the Apostle Paul wants us to do with governmental authorities. This is Romans 13. Submission to governing authorities. Let everyone be subject to the government authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authorities, rebelling against what God has instituted. And those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from fear of the one in authority? Then do what is right, and you will be commended. For the one in authority is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They are God's servants, agents of wrath, to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. Therefore, it is necessary to submit to the authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but also because of matter of conscience. This is also why you pay taxes, for the authorities are God's servants who give their full time to governing. Give to everyone what you owe them. If you owe taxes, pay taxes. If revenue, then revenue. If respect, then respect. If honor, then honor. So the Apostle Paul is saying, and you have to understand, this was written during the Roman Empire. Okay, and so remember, Jesus was killed, was crucified by the Romans. Okay, so this is a church that the Apostle Paul started amidst crazy turmoil, and he's saying that to the church members, he's saying to his flock, to obey the laws. Okay, don't break the law, so that you don't become afraid of authorities, and you don't be subject to the tyranny that they can befall you because they're in power. Okay, and we have to recognize that the Bible also talks about not avenging ourselves. That God is the ultimate justifier. He's the ultimate avenger. He's the ultimate one that will fulfill justice on earth. So we don't need to worry about it.
What about the civil rights movement? What about Martin Luther King? They broke the law.
Peaceful resistance to unjust law is perfectly fine, but that's not what Pastor Rodney did. Okay, first of all, this is not, in my opinion, it's funny because this is a constitutional law issue and a religious issue, so it's basically like an issue for me in one, because I'm a lawyer and I'm pastor in training. So the fact is, this is not an unjust law. The law was passed to protect the safety of people. Okay, and it's not directed specifically to religious organizations. It's directed to everyone. I can't have a game night. I can't have people over at my house to have some fun. I can't go to the restaurants. I can't go anywhere. Nobody can go anywhere. So this is not singling out religious meetings. So this law was not intended on its face or in its intent to prevent the congregation or the practice of religious freedom. You know, want to know why? Because we live in a time where we could meet online. I do my community group online. We live in a world today where it's easy to talk to people. It's easy to connect with people. It's easy to keep up to date. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, telephone calls, Zoom, Google Meet, email. There are very little hindrances these days to being connected. This is a serious issue. We've had so many deaths just this week. Young people are getting infected and dying. Old people are getting infected and dying. People with pre-existing conditions. This is not something to play with. And to subject your congregation to this virus, thinking that you can that you know more than the government authorities, you know more than the doctors, which I don't know how many doctors they had or how many virologists or whatever you call them people, how many people were, where was Dr. Fauci? It is not unheard of for, people in the congregations, priests and pastors, to quarantine somebody because they are unclean or because they are infected, when there was leprosy. Whether it was being unclean through a nocturnal emission, whatever it was, if somebody was unclean, they had to separate themselves for a period of, usually 7 days, clean themselves, disrobe, cut their hair, basically get rid of the infection. Okay, so infections are real. God recognized infections. God recognized, pestilence is one of the markers of the end times. Now, whether or not we're in the end times because of all things that are happening, that's another video. I ain't got time to get into that right now. But what I am certain of is that the government implementing a law stating that it is better to be at home than to come meet when we have a highly infectious, highly deadly, lethal virus is not unjust. It's not an unjust law. Martin Luther King is not rolling around in his grave. So there are multiple occasions where, due to pestilence, due to certain situations, somebody was unclean and needed to be separated from other people. That's exactly what we're going through now. Okay, there is a virus that started, many miles away, that traveled all its way over here because of how infectious it is. This is literally killing people. This is killing young people. This is killing mothers and fathers. This is not something to be played with. This is real. I don't agree with this course of action. I don't think this was in the best interest of his flock. And I think that this is not an unjust law. The government is not preventing us from meeting and from preaching the gospel, from practicing our religion. They're saying for a temporary period of time until this virus that is killing people subsides, we should stay behind at home. So stay your monkey behind at home. Don't get offended. I call everybody monkeys. Okay? Anyway, you'll be all right. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I would love to hear your comments. Your comments are so amazing. They're so inspiring and encouraging. I just love to read all of them. So I would please just put them down in the comment section below. If they're not disrespectful, I will respond. And if you want to like the video, that really helps our video out. So just to get these scriptures out and to get my goofy behind out, hey, everybody wins. That's all I got for you. Y'all be cool.